A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum Extra, coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90. This being a Friday, we review the major events of the week. We'll be looking at the fate of the Richard Lumu bill. Now, that is the Administration of Parliament Amendment Bill 2024, which is commonly known as the Lumu bill, where most people that have appeared before the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, which was mandated to scrutinize this bill, seem to have rejected it, including political parties. Surprisingly, even the NRM that very many people thought would embrace this bill in the bid to upsurge the opposition has also rejected it, saying that it only serves to weaken the opposition, and as the NRM, they do not want to see that kind of situation. There are so many things that have been said about this bill, the timing of it, and the possibility that it could be a culmination of a fight inside Parliament, some people trying to use this process to actually score goals. So we'll be looking at this matter in detail, especially what is the fate of this bill and in whose interest is it, despite the fact that it is being brought by a private member who is entitled under the rules of Parliament to actually do so. We'll be looking at that matter in detail. Then we'll be looking at the fate of the jail NUP supporters after their guilty plea. Now, 16 supporters of the National Unity Platform Party, well, it has been said they could face the death penalty after pleading guilty or to terrorism charges. Now, legal experts have been saying that what they have actually done could turn out to be disastrous. Now, the group, which includes Olivia Lutaya, has been on trial since 2020 following their arrest during the crackdown on the activities of their political party, the NUP. They have, over the last years, rejected the charges and said they were trumped up, an issue that has also been re-echoed by their leaders in the different political parties. But now we have seen a situation where they are now admitting and saying, indeed, they committed the offense. Some people have attributed this development to the activities of the Youth and Children Affairs Minister, Balam Barugahare, who is said to have visited these prisoners several times. We remember very well Balam did indicate that he would work tirelessly to have them released at the time he was appointed the Minister for Youth and Children Affairs. So we'll be asking, what are the implications of this development, and have these prisoners chosen the right path? Further beyond, we'll be going to Kenya to look at the situation where the deputy president has been impeached. Well, today, William Ruto, the president of Kenya, did nominate 72-year-old Professor Kithure Kindiki to become the deputy president after his colleague that they ran with during the last election was actually impeached by Parliament, the National Assembly, and later this was also confirmed by the Senate. He has now appointed Professor Kithure Kindiki, and his name has been approved, and he now awaits to take oath. We'll be looking at what this means, and politically what this means for Kenya, that we always look forward to, given what we think are positive developments in its political processes. Well, I have a panel of 4 to discuss this issue. Ambassador Simon Mulongo, he is a governance and security expert who did serve as the deputy head of the African Union Mission in Somalia, AMISOM. He did represent the people of Bubulo East in Parliament, but he was also among the framers of our constitution. He did attend the Constituent Assembly and participated actively there. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Honorable
It's nice
Simon
being
Mulongo.
here once again, and good evening, our good listeners.
Also in studio, Mr. George Musisi. He is a lawyer by profession. He's a member of the National Unity Platform, pundit on governance and human rights issues. Good evening, George. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Good evening, Anderson. Good evening to listeners, and pleasure to be here. I don't know why you didn't introduce Simon's party.
Simon Pate belongs to the National Resistance Movement. I thought I didn't have to introduce him because
Yeah, I'm dressed in the colors
dressed
of the
in
party.
the colours.
But it's a
And
fading yellow. Like, go forward.
our colleague is not in red.
George Musisi suggests that you are putting on a fading yellow. I don't know what that means.
Go forward.
Dr. Sarah Birete, Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance, pundit on governance and human rights issues. Good evening, Dr. Sarah. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm told you've been globetrotting.
Glad to be back, and thank you for inviting me to Spectrum Extra again. Good evening, listeners.
Well, you've been outside there. What's the image of Uganda? What are people saying about our country? When you introduce yourself in these big meetings and say, I'm Dr. Sarah from Uganda.
Well, it's not on the agenda today.
It is not.
Yeah, but many people ask how is the president, especially given what's happening to Cameroon.
Do they describe him as
They are worried about.
They are
They are worried about.
Doctor,
That question was not put to her when she was there.
All
I'm
right.
aware.
You are aware. Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, political economist, pundit on governance and social issues. Good evening, Dr. Serunkuma. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Anderson.
Well, gentlemen and ladies, here we are, and we'll begin very quickly with this Administration of Parliament Amendment Bill, which was brought by Lumu. The substance of it, he wants the political party with the majority on the opposition to front 3 names from which a leader of opposition can be elected. Then he also wants the shadow cabinet to actually be vetted by the entire opposition. He also wants the position of Deputy Speaker of Parliament ring-fenced for the opposition. He says he means well, but some people think that's not true. I'll begin with you, Dr. Sarah.
Well, I've been trying to watch the body language of Honorable Lumu ever since he introduced this ridiculous bill.
Body language.
The body language does not depict somebody who means well, and it does not depict somebody who believes in the cause they are pursuing. My analysis is that, and conviction is that this is not Lumu's bill. Lumu is fronting somebody's agenda. The spirit of this bill is the speaker's fight with the opposition in parliament, especially the current leader of opposition. How was this bill mooted? Parliament goes to Gulu on a pilgrimage, really, that many Ugandans were opposed to as a waste of taxpayers' money. And in the first sitting, the speaker declares that they will only handle matters concerning northern Uganda, and in her own words, she cannot tolerate any such nonsense. And then the nonsense surfaces in Gulu itself, with the Lumu introducing a bill to overseat Honorable Joel Senyonyi. Why do I say so?
As you say that, keep in mind that the speaker is authorized to amend the order paper.
Yes, of course. And that's why members are free to debate the order paper and even introduce matters they envisage as matters of national importance. But that was her own ruling, that they will attend to matters. So I'm quoting her own decision. So when Lumu introduces the bill, it was clear to many Ugandans, well-intentioned Ugandans, that this was a bill just meant to fight NUP and the Honorable Joel Senyonyi. What are the contents of this bill? The main issue is to vote or to take away powers of the second party in the governance, take away the powers to appoint the leader of opposition and distribute this power amongst MPs, including those that have 1, 2, 3 MPs in parliament, to determine who becomes the leader of opposition in parliament. In a multi-party dispensation, there are 2 main actors. The number 1 party takes power and becomes the ruling party. The number 2 party becomes the government in waiting and fronts the alternative agenda to keep the ruling party under check. So when you start debating matters, saying anybody can become law, because that was the first proposal. This is just the latest amendment after the backlash. When you start fronting matters that anybody can become leader of opposition, what alternative agenda are you going to front? And is that alternative agenda sanctioned by the voters? So Ugandans need to understand that both the ruling party and the leader of opposition in a multi-party dispensation are determined by the people, the voters. So when you want to usurp this function, so Lumu is not only trying to organize opposition in courts, he is usurping the power of Ugandans in determining who becomes the ruling party and who becomes the alternative government as a leader of opposition. If anybody meant well for this position or the changes we need to strengthen our multi-party dispensation is an amendment that makes the leader of opposition outside parliament the same leader of opposition in parliament. What would this amendment require? It would require that we amend Article 85A of the Constitution and make the leader, the runners-up in presidential elections, an ex-officio of parliament and leads opposition both in and outside parliament. That is the amendment that we need, but not this lullaby of Lumu and Honorable Anita Among. We don't need this.
All right. Mr. George Musisi, you were before that committee. You took the views of the National Unity Platform Party together with your Secretary General. What's your general take on this particular? Why did you choose to reject the bill in principle?
Of course, I entirely agree with everything Sarah said. Only to add regarding that, yes, first of all, look at the process, the manner in which it came. You don't have to have lived in Uganda for so long to know that sometimes processes betray the intentions of the movers. Indeed, the speaker had guided. When a speaker gives a guidance, yes, you can move away from her guidance. Then you have to give reason why you're moving away. She had described anything non-northern Uganda as nonsense. Said, leave that to your Kampala, leave that nonsense to Kampala. In fact, the following day, when Mr. Lumu attempted to try to seek leave, someone, I think it was Honorable Mapenduzi, tried to remind the speaker of her ruling, and she shut him down. When Mr. Lumu was seeking leave, he said, as a Democrat, I believe in voting for every person who leads me. In fact, he said, even as a Catholic, the Pope is voted for. Now, if you're to take even that limited view of democracy alone, it would mean that if, for instance, in the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee where he sits, his chairperson is just designated. It would mean that the members would have to vote for their chairperson, which doesn't happen. If you say that every lead in democracy, every position should be elected, it would mean that every committees should vote for their chair. It would mean that even NRM MPs would vote for their chief whip. Otherwise, why would you have a chief whip who's designated to you?
Even the leader of government business
When
should be voted.
came to Kampala and addressed the press, that's when he talked about actually the issue of the deputy speaker. In the final draft, it's not there. He talked about now the deputy speaker. That deputy speaker should be replaced for opposition. In the draft which you are discussing now, before Parliament, it's not there. But then again, that's why you say that why would he seek to reject it? When, as a Mr. Lumu is a lawyer whom I know and respect, and is a colleague and friend.
A land colleague.
Yes. When you are seeking an amendment in a law, the first question should always be, what defect do you intend to cure? What defect has been seen since 2006 that Mr. Lumu seeks to cure? It's a very, very narrow view of democracy to think that multipartyism means that the official position means that all parties which have not won are the official position. That's what it means. Because it's saying that these parties should have a say. What is in effect is saying that actually when he first sought leave, he attempted to mean that even Jema, for instance, in today's parliament, which has one party, can front Basa Alirwa, Nope brings another, and then they vote. Then when he came to Kampala, he moved away from that position, said, okay, the leading party fronts 3, and then we vote from the 3.
Let's focus on what went on the floor, the content of the bill that went on the floor.
That's what the
meandering between Gulu and Kampala.
No, the meandering is important to tell you the process. I told you that the processes are important part of lawmaking process. Because when he sought leave, he was already on the road to bring in his bill. And I'm trying to show you that by the time maybe he sought leave in Gulu, he didn't have anything.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to show you.
Okay.
If Lumu was being honest, my brother, what you would have started with was to consult these parties. Actually, even his own Democratic Party has said that, no, that's not our position. So if the key stakeholders are not finding any problem with the position, the question then glaring in the room is, in whose interest is Lumu acting? The key stakeholders are political parties, not even just opposition, but even all political parties, because each can potentially be in opposition in government. So in whose interest? Multipartyism works by numbers. The winner takes all and forms government. The second runner-up forms the official opposition. Actually, under many stronger what Lumu is suggesting is not even seen if you do it comparatively, even in better democracies like Ghana and South Africa, and it's not been seen anywhere. It's a novel Lumu prototype. But what do we intend to cure? There's not been a problem, first of all, in the administration. What it is going to do, it's going to whittle down. The essence of multipartyism is that a party should have some control. That is even a Supreme Court decision here in Uganda, the Nsereko Sechikubo Tinka similar case. That party should have some control over their members. You know, one time you invited me here, Anderson, and there was a hulabalu over NOP attempting to withdraw commissioner. And I said, but one of the oldest parties has ever withdrawn a sitting president. We're talking about parliamentary commissioners. Has ever withdrawn a sitting president. So a party should have, there's a difference between Yusuf, who seeks to run as an independent, and you who subjects yourself. Otherwise, you cannot be an independent and a party.
Wait, do you use Yusuf to mean me?
Yes, you can potentially run. You have all the... That was giving an example. So the essence is that...
Are you trying to advertise him?
To interest him.
If there was an election in Makerere, I bet he would be a candidate.
Yusuf is a political
But
theorist. I want him to be
conclude your
political.
point.
So the point is, the ultimate test of Lumu's proposals would whittle down multi-party democracy.
Right, Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90. I want to go back to you, George, a little bit, but also Dr. Sarah Birete, before I bring in your colleagues on this panel. So, what do you think are the chances of this bill having been rejected at the committee level? There are people who are saying that, wait a minute. We saw what happened in Toji Kwatako. People were being chased away from their constituencies, but when they reached in Parliament, things were changing. Do you think we have seen the last of this bill?
From a legal point of view, the essence of this process right now that is going through is a consultative process. And consultation is part of the lawmaking process. In fact, failure to consult can be a ground for the court to annul a law. So the committee will write a report, either with the views of what it has received, or we've also seen it in Parliament. Even this one, when they are passing the Nsereko amendment on the computer misuse, they totally rejected the views that they got from the consultations.
And went with
their own. But even if they say that the people have rejected them, this Parliament, even in the rules, they can the committee of the whole house can throw away what the committee has said and adopt. They are not bound by the decision, the report of the committee. In fact, remember, even in this 11th Parliament, during the Zaki report, the legal the rules committee had written that let him apologize. Then the committee of the whole house said no. In fact, we should chase him. So it depends on the spirit operating on Mr. Lumu's mind.
All right.
That spirit can still operate on the house, and they do whatever they want.
Dr. Sarah Birete, have we seen the last of this bill, or things are likely to change in the house?
Well, I think Dr. Lumu should save himself from the embarrassment, self-inflicted embarrassment, and withdraw the bill.
He should withdraw it.
He should save himself from the self-inflicted embarrassment. This is a very embarrassing bill. Adds no value. Seeks to cure no problem or lacuna in law. And is just targeting. We cannot legislate for personal fights. I know that Parliament has, in very many ways, degenerated, but we cannot reach a level of legislating for personal fights. And then you want such a personal fight between the Speaker and the current leader of opposition to be captured under the rules of Uganda couple ABC. Really, have we reached this level?
Let's go for a break now. When we return, we'll hear the views of Dr. Simon Mulongo, Ambassador Simon Mulongo, and Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma on this bill. Have we seen the last of it? Is it likely to somersault? And we see a situation where the House passes it into... Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Xtra, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Be part of this show by sharing with us your views using the WhatsApp line 0703-090-090. My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host, and today, being a Friday, we review the major events of the week. We are winding up the discussion on the fate of the Richard Lumu Bill, the Administration of Parliament Amendment Bill. And my guest this evening, Dr. Sarah Birete, Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance, George Musisi, a lawyer and member of the NUP, Dr. Honorable Simon Mulongo, Governance and Security Expert, Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, he is a political economist. Let's hear from you, Ambassador Mulongo. What's your take on this bill?
Thank you.
And how it has been perceived by the key stakeholders, the political parties?
Thank you very much. In this country, when we made the Constitution, we guaranteed fundamental freedoms, which includes freedoms of conscience and of expression. And surely we should not treat such an innovation and throw it that way and ridicule it, because these are innovative ideas, and innovative ideas emerge. And that's how whether political consciousness or philosophical positions emerge. So I think that the Honorable Richard Lumu is one of those who have thought outside the box to say we can make adjustments in our practices.
Inside the box.
And I think that this is something we should not just ridicule, but critically evaluate. And I think my brother here from the Ivory Tower should be able to embrace, like we do always in academia, to embrace ideas, but also critically review such ideas and subject them to certain rigors and see whether they can stand the test. So in my view, there are three merits that this bill brings. One is of democratic inclusion, and the Honorable Musi was saying, well, he does not dismiss the fact that we elect the Speaker of the House using democratic means, and it can happen. So it can also be used in other areas, including the leader of opposition. And I also think that this enhances accountability, very, very importantly, because the law is more responsive to the collective interests of the opposition than just one party. Because to be majority leader, you can actually be a leader by just one extra, and others are as big generally, if in terms of numbers. So really, to me, that will be that. And finally, it will be subjecting the election of such a leader through a structured process. So to me, Lumu has brought in some ideas which we should chew, but not just throw away. However, having said that, his idea, interesting as it may sound, is quite unique, because in the sense that, because somebody thinks, because I've introduced it that way, it means I must maintain one line. If you're driving on the road and you maintain a straight line, you can even end up in a river.
Does unique mean the same as strange?
Yes, it actually is strange because
fanciful?
Fairly, no, it's strange in the sense that most of the democracies around the world, particularly Commonwealth democracies, really have a little opposition representing the biggest party. And maybe only in Switzerland is where we have direct democracy, and where such even election of the soul, something close to a LOP, is done democratically. And so I find that one having an issue, because then we have no recourse to some experience to share from, and as such it may have a challenge. The other one is that the argument that have been raised by many people is the issue of fragmentation. And I want to agree with them that yes, whereas it has some merits, it may have, it will perhaps make worse divisions within opposition. Because once you elect somebody who could be maybe more eloquent, but does not have the cloud of followership and so on, and then you end up having secondary wars other than having the primary purpose for which the opposition is supposed to serve as potential alternative governments in the waiting. The other one is the issue of costs and the bureaucracy that go with it. I think that would definitely have additional costs, other than just automatically somebody being a leader of opposition by virtue of being a member of the majority party in the parliament.
All right.
So, no.
Yes, as you wind up.
I'm not winding up, because I'm taking the same amount of time.
All right, make your point.
Yes, that's why I'm making my point.
Do you have the timer?
And this, Anderson, you
I
shouldn't-
do
you
have a
should- You should
timer.
introduce a timer. But you accept to be bullied by
next time,
by the ambassador.
next time we have.
He's bullying you now.
I'm not bullying him. I'm just being a majority leader of sorts because, I mean, in this case, the NRM is a majority leader
Nobody
here.
voted you to do
So, in this,
In
the
Kampala,
point
NRM
is,
is the minority. Actually.
I think the other issue was down to agree with the Honorable Mc, and to some degree, Dr. Virete, that the consultations were not adequate, even if they're saying they were not there. Because if you are to rally people, you then, in terms of political parties, you need to hear from them. And that's the reason why, in the current committee stage of deliberations, almost all parties are declining to show support for the motion. So that means that there was a need to have, because this being something new, a new idea, there was a need to have a very good persuasion of other actors to support him. And of course, me being a Democrat, if actually the majority will oppose it, I know Dr. Serunkum will say that even the smallest, the minority can be the strongest. But in this case, really, if we're to bow,
I'm not going to say that.
to the forces of as Ngwinyi
I
Kenya
will
said,
not- I will not say that.
the tyranny of the majority. If the tyranny of the majority carries the day, why not? But for me, my point I'm making is that I don't want just to dismiss the idea for the sake of it, but also I think we should subject any new idea to the rigors. And apparently, as they have said, it doesn't seem to be catching the fire as we should have.
And
Right, let's hear from Dr.
There's
Serunkum.
a very obvious irony that, and I'm shocked this irony is clearly lost on the mover of this motion. Mr. Museveni, who emerges as president of Uganda, as leader of the country, appoints so many people who actually lead Lumu. Many people under whom Lumu operates, are simply appointed. So if he said, as one of the things that moving his bill, that he's led by people entirely voted for, Mr. Museveni appoints so many leaders in this country that Lumu has to subject himself to, but they are not voted for. So if we are saying the leader of opposition, the leader of the majority party in the opposition cannot appoint his leader of opposition in parliament, then perhaps we will say even the president shouldn't appoint ministers. Perhaps we should say the many positions that Museveni, because our constitution is like a place where you can find jobs, where Museveni finds jobs to place them along. Goes, what are you? Are you a presidential advisor yourself?
No, I'm not.
You don't have a
but,
position? Surely you're soon getting a position, or you have a position.
No. But that's not about positions. It's about
So
playing
Museveni,
our roles.
the president has positions where he appoints people to, pretend of our wretched lives, and they're simply appointed. Right? So to say that the leader of the majority party in the opposition cannot appoint the leader of the opposition is ironical. It should be lost on this irony should be lost
And the speaker?
on the mover of this bill. You see, but that notwithstanding, it's not my point I wanted to say. I wanted to say that many people are actually appointed on either side of those who emerge as leaders. So it's not unique to have somebody in a leadership position appointing another in another leadership position. But my point is this, Anderson, I must be the most boring panelist you often invite to this show because I tend to repeat myself, right? One of the things I worry about is the place and position of a leader of opposition in a parliament under William Museveni. It bothers me. I struggle to understand their core functions and how they advance the pains of the ordinary Ugandan, right? If you go through the years we've had this office of leader of opposition, from the best to perhaps whoever people consider the worst, I cannot point to a single issue that concerns Ugandans that has been powerfully defended by the office of the leader of the opposition, right? So perhaps the point I'm trying to say is this.
So you mean these members here are just talking nothing?
Well,
they're not impacting?
because look, the point from, for example,
What has that got to do with us?
council is in a wonderful legal position. decorum requires that you allow me to speak.
Ambassadors NRM, so
That it's a true to tradition.
Surprisingly, you seem to share the same character.
Well, I listened patiently, right? But the point I'm making is this.
All right.
Is that if you live under Yoweri Museveni, right, the small offices in parliament really count for so little for the ordinary Ugandan. Speaking as an ordinary Ugandan myself, I have never found value in commissioners of parliament, leaders of opposition in parliament, and perhaps even the MPs.
But these are constitutional structures.
I get
so
it. But
you can't argue for constitutionalism.
Because you see...
And then you don't respect the institutions therein.
Because you see, one of the things that bothers me is that we live under what you call a modern autocracy. And what Lumu is pushing, in the ways in which he's doing it, he's following democratic procedure. And to a degree, what he's doing is legitimately possible. He's legally protected. It's constitutionally protected. That's the process through which you go to bring bills and enact amendments. He's constitutionally and legally protected, right? But you need to understand that a modern autocracy focuses on the process. Council here tried to do a distinction between the process and the intent. What matters is the process, because the intent is a foregone conclusion. This bill, with all its imperfections, with all its pettiness and meaninglessness, will pass as long as there are big wigs who want it to pass. So the process is the ways in which we're governed. The intent is completed. If they want to pass the Tajukwata Call, they just go through the technocracies of democracy, the technical things, voting, asking for leave, and doing this and doing that. What is called the tyranny of the majority is the ways in which our autocrats reproduce themselves. So as long as Museveni wants it, as long as Speaker of Parliament wants it, as long as there are big wigs who really want this to happen, and as you can imagine, I think we're moving towards this could be like the starter, that meal you have before the big meal. Because there's another big meal coming. Very soon we'll be moving a bill to say the president is voted through Parliament. You don't have the president of the country doesn't have to go around the country campaigning. You see, so we the main course is yet to come. We now have a starter, right? And I can guarantee you, Anderson, as long as the people in power want this circus to go through, in its pettiness, in its uselessness, in its imperfection, it will go through, because already we are under a modern autocracy. What it does, it bamboozles us with the process. It overwhelms us with the process. The process appears very, very democratic. And I can guarantee you, Lumu, being a lawyer himself, will go through the democratically protected process and will deliver a foregone conclusion. You see, so, Anderson, the point I'm trying to make is that we spend copious amounts of time discussing the circus in Parliament. You see, the circus of the position of the leader of opposition, as if, because for me, as I've told you before, for me, at the present, I think who the actual leader of opposition, the radical leader of the opposition, is the Jimmy Spire Sentongo, in my assessment. Because you see, even folks in Parliament are following what is happening on the streets. All right. What's happening outside of Parliament.
Let's look at the proposal that Dr. Sarah Virete put forward that she thinks is the most popular one, where we should have the actual leader of the political party going to Parliament.
I'm going to repeat myself, Anderson. That's a grand idea, and it works wonderfully well if you live in a democracy.
That's what we are aspiring to go.
You see the problem, but we are trapped in this moment. We have to think within our moment. You see, we have our punditry and analysis behaving like we are in democratic UK or democratic America. I don't know how democratic these places are also.
How will we get there without going through these processes?
Anderson, we have to have ideas.
And these are ideas
contained within our time. We have an autocrat. People in the opposition continuously remind us Museveni is a dictator. Now, the grand idea, to what effect? Anderson, you tell me, if you have Chagulanyi as the leader of opposition in Parliament, if you have Kizza Besigye, to what effect? To what end? That when the Tajukwata campaign bill is tabled will not pass? That the OTT will not pass? To what effect? That Bamtrach will not be the head of the Civil Aviation Authority even when she has no qualification? To what effect?
That's another matter.
I'm just telling you that the circus in Parliament under an autocrat who has understood that you can work within the democratic processes is useless. We need to rethink our approach to reforming this country. I'm telling you, Anderson, to what end will be Chagulanyi being leader of opposition in Parliament?
Let me just put this on record. We do not have any conclusive evidence on this table that Bam Turaki does not have the qualifications to be the head of Uganda Airlines. The matter was deliberated in Parliament.
The current leader of opposition.
The matter was deliberated in Parliament. A report was made, and she was reappointed.
You may pass a comment on this
we will
one.
not have that on record.
As a member of NUP.
Wind up your point.
The point, I must be the most boring panelist you often invite, because you see, in the grand scheme of things, if we're talking reforming this country, Anderson, if we're talking reforming this country, a man recently embarrassed us. A man embarrassed us yesterday. Let me finish this. Let me finish this point. A man embarrassed us yesterday. A man embarrassed us yesterday. He built a hospital with 1 billion. We have given a woman, a Mzungu, I think 700 billion, and we'll have a foundation.
Are you sure it's going to Mzungu? Or you're saying what?
Well, and then right now,
I want to ask Dr. Serunkuma, given this situation that we are in, what are you advising that we should do? Should we sit down and watch things unravel?
No, we need to rethink. Because you see, we need to rethink our approach to reforming this country. Parliament is a circus. Whatever we do inside that house, we are playing the game of the oppressor.
Yeah, but
the oppressor understood. No, get out of that house. I said Museveni can lose an election if he stood alone. If he only stood alone, that's when you lose an election.
It's a theory, no?
If you stand, he has never lost any.
Theory.
He has never. You see, Museveni understood. You remember when Tajukata was happening? Museveni understood that if all the opposition MPs boycotted Parliament, he will lose. So he actually had to bribe them to stay in Parliament and vote against the bill. You see, so you have to understand that if he were to be left to stand alone, he will lose that election. People of the NUP, people in the opposition, have to think you can't play the master's game. I have said, this man, the modern autocrat, works from within Parliament.
All right. We get your point. Now, let's move on a little bit. We know the Honorable Matthias Impuga, the former leader of opposition, has also come out with some proposals for amendment. And the opposition leaders who appeared before the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee were heard saying that the proposal by Lumu is not the ideal, or is not the kind of things they wanted to see. They wanted to see reforms that would eventually change the manner in which we conduct elections and create a semblance of acceptable results. And I think it's NUP is one of the parties that has been heard actually saying, with or without reforms, elections in Uganda can be won. We want to hear your point on that, on the issue of electoral reforms.
Well, if you want to see
the position of your party, have you taken any?
Is the spokesperson?
I'm not the spokesperson, but
you are one of the legal people there, probably very critical in even drafting papers.
Can I then answer my question?
Yeah.
I carry one head, which I use in NUP, I use at home, and I use in church.
And we know the content is in that head.
Well, the question of reforms, electoral reforms, can only be seen from the context of the elections we've had. And to answer your question rightly, do we need electoral reforms? Yes. And what are some of even the most critical electoral reforms? Since 2001, when we had the first judicial audit of elections in post-1995, the issue has always been about reforms. Come to 2006, 2016. In 2016, the Supreme Court even went a step forward by saying, government, we are giving you timelines within which you should come back and report to court how far you've gone. Because the problems were always that you change the laws so belatedly, you bring these amendments to Parliament so belatedly, and then what are the problems that have bedeviled elections since 2001? The issues of security interference, the issues of independence of elections. So, and in fact, Mr. Ampoga is not the first person even to attempt is not the first private member to attempt to bring reforms. The last one I think was even Honorable Nwagaba in 2019, which were nipped in the bud. Previously, before that, there was another attempt. I think it was even the LOP then. So, the issue is that, yes, we need reforms, and it has always been the strategy of this government that there is no faith in having a fair ground, in having a free and fair process as envisaged by the Constitution. That's why they amend the laws so belatedly. I'm sure they'll bring those amendments close to 2026. Mr. Mao, when he joined cabinet, since then he has been promising a constitutional amendment. It's 3 years down the road. He's been promising a constitutional amendment, even up to now. So when you go to the particular reforms that Mr. Mpuga has proposed, those that I have seen, the question is, if you go to, do they touch the most pertinent issues that have bedeviled elections? In my opinion, no. Of course, some of them are just a matter of fact. For instance, there is an issue to do with prisoners voting and people in the diaspora. That is right, because there's a court judgment to that effect. So indeed, they should amend the law because the court ruled that way. They should amend the law to put that in place. But he goes further in even suggesting, for instance, he suggests a position of a deputy president who should be nominated and elected together with the presidential candidate. And then goes ahead to say that the deputy president should chair one, because it suggests a two-tier legislature. Then should chair one tier of the legislature. So which brings some bit of a fusion between the executive and the legislature, because the deputy president is part of the presidency. So what are you going to do with other issues of the constitution which talk about separation of powers?
What
and
kind of NRC?
where we had the speaker. And then there are a number of other issues like term limits and so on and so forth. But for me, most importantly, the question is, are those, what reforms do we need? Because like I told you, when you are amending, you see that what has been the biggest problem. Because certainly we cannot have a fundamental reform which you amend each and everything. But the biggest problem has been the involvement of security, has been independence of the commission. This Sarah here was part of the civil society in 2011 when they brought up the Citizens Compact. You remember it? Which was a consultative process of civil society going around the country trying to get views that people thought they needed. And it was quite comprehensive. 2014. So all of them were thrown out and were thrown out of the basket, and they were never taken in. Then the only thing they brought in was to change the name to include Independent Electoral Commission, as if by nomenclature it would mean it's independent. So if you look at the last election, 2021, what was the biggest problem? The biggest problem was that our constitution says Electoral Commission should be in charge of the management of each and every aspect of the election. Then what is the role of security? Security, it's envisaged to be under the direction and control of Electoral Commission, at least pertaining to electoral issues. It shouldn't be security telling a candidate, you campaign here, don't campaign there, in the course of the election. Otherwise, you'd have ceded the management to another body. Just like you see they're called presiding officers at a polling station. When a constable comes, a constable is under the direction of the presiding officer. The presiding officer is in charge of the polling station. That's how it should be. But we have issues of the security involvement, issues of the independence of the commission, issues of management of disputes in the course of the election, because whereas the EC Act says that if there are any disputes, EC should be the court of first instance. But it doesn't have the capacity to hear them and resolve them in the course of the election. So all those are issues that would have gone towards. But then again, so whereas those reforms don't touch the most important issues, but then on the other side, government has no will to ensure that those reforms, all electoral reforms which are most pertinent, are passed or even discussed, at least on time. Right. That's why, up to now, Mr. Mao is only talking about his amendments. All right. He hasn't shown them, he hasn't seen them anyway, he's just talking about them and promising to bring them.
Dr. Sarah Birete, you also were the heart of an election observer, not only an election observer, but head of an election observers network in
the whole world.
In the whole world.
Yes.
Can you talk to us the Ugandan situation with electoral reforms?
In the whole world.
Even North Korea.
Well, I'm the chairperson of the Global Network for Domestic Election Observers, with the headquarters in Washington, D.C. Elected and opposed by 5 continents.
Wow.
So I belong to the school.
Was that
thought.
election free and fair?
Now when the host becomes the heckler, the host is heckling. What is this?
Carry on, Dr. Sarah.
Yeah, so I belong to the group of Ugandans that advocate for reforms, constitution and electoral reforms. Is this the right time? If the reforms are enacted by this parliament, they will not impact the next election because we have lost time. But they will gradually impact democratization in this country if they are progressive. If they are regressive, they will take away the little gains that Ugandans are remaining with democratically because we are in a democratic backslide as a country. What reforms are necessary for our electoral process? Personally, I would want a reform that gives district returning officers powers to declare presidential elections so that we don't wait for the national. National should be for purposes of tabulation and announcement of the total. But the results of which presidential candidate has won, I know it's declared at a polling center, but the official declaration is by the Electoral Commission at the National Tally Center. We have had challenges with transmission, tabulation, and announcement of presidential results. That process has never been transparent. To the extent that at one time, there was a center in Nagu allegedly posting results on the Electoral Commission website. In 2011, allegedly results were posted from a business center at Sheraton for announcement. So, in most cases, the results that Ugandans vote for are not necessarily the results that are announced. Or we do not have a mechanism for confirming that indeed the results that Ugandans vote for a president are the results that are announced at a national tally center.
Anderson,
we need this mechanism.
Can I really quickly?
Very quickly.
You know, these are our aspirations of the future. I really think that we will have to hit a constitutional crisis. I love the stuff that Sarah is saying and Georgia is saying, but this stuff is for the future. These are aspirations of the future. We need to undergo a constitutional crisis. We have a constitution which has been violated immensely. That, you know, like when I listened to George, he laid out things that really are necessary for this country, but he forgot the politics. You know, listening to Sarah here, I admire and I really think once we hit a constitutional crisis, people like Sarah who have been for a very long time involved in electoral reforms and as a global leader, they should be at the forefront in how we strengthen our democracy. But I worry that the timing is difficult for this conversation, Simon, Anderson. The timing bothers me so much. I really struggle to find...
When is the right time, Yusuf?
We need to hit a constitutional crisis first. To say maybe we go back to the CA. Maybe.
That's a new consensus.
Maybe. Because at the moment, we are stuck in he called it a backslide. No, it's not even a backslide. We are in the abyss, man. We like Stone Age period. Because, you know, we keep asking questions to what end? If this reform is done, to what end?
All right. Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break. When we return, Dr. Ambassador Simon Mulongo will pick it from there, share the information. Well, all right, we'll give you an opportunity to
but of course
we will continue.
Spectrum Xtra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
We know these times have been challenging, but also believe that business shouldn't stop, whether trading inland or across borders. Tambos are business with our trade finance services that are designed to make it easy for you.
You can bet it, the discussion went on even during the break. And that's how heated the discussion is here in studio. As we continue with Spectrum Xtra. Now, let's just hear some of the views that have come in from the listeners from the time we started discussing, and then we'll carry on. Good evening, Kenneth. George from Bunga. But we continue struggling debating the Lumu bill. That's a question. Where will this bill pass when it doesn't impress the ruling regime? And kindly just remind me the bill which has ever gone through without the blessing of the big man's wish. That's a comment there. Then we have another comment. Hello, moderator. The intentions of the bill are known. It's in favor of the speaker and it's to allow the ruling government to control all the affairs of parliament. Then Masaba Joseph, listening in from Tororo District, writes in and says, Lumu's bill is coming to oppress the rights of the people, and Lumu is a puppet of Mr. Museveni, who is behind Anita Among. Then we have another comment. Anderson, thank you for the program. Honorable Simon Mulongo makes a curious statement that the major opposition might only be one more MP than the third largest, and yet our constitution provides that the president will get 50% plus one votes. That's a comment that comes in from Pat there. Dr. Sarah, you wanted to conclude your point. Do conclude, and then we'll hear from Ambassador Mulongo very quickly.
Yeah, I have looked through the bills, the Constitution Amendment Bill and the Electoral Commission Amendment Bill by Honorable Matthias Impuga. I think for me the issue of having a deputy, two chambers of parliament, first of all, I am not in support of that. I think I support the reduction of parliament, size of parliament. We need maybe about 150 MPs. We don't need a crowd of about 600 like we do. And we don't need two chambers. We are a small country, small economy, it would be a waste of money. What we need is to improve the quality of people that we call honorable MPs. Some of the people that we have in the current parliament are really not fit even to lead primary schools, I'm sorry to say. But
you should apologize for that.
No, yeah, of course, they are supposed to be honorable members of parliament. So we need to improve as citizens the quality of people we send to represent us in that house. They do serious work. During CA, Ugandans voted for top quality, top-notch Ugandans to enact to promulgate the constitution. From there, we reduced our standards, and I don't know why, because the job requirements are still the same. You cannot make a constitution and then elect people of a lower quality. It's no wonder that the constitution has been mutated to the extent that we cannot even recognize it as compared to the constitution that we got in 1995. Because us as a people, we lowered our standards, as two should represent us in parliament. So we need to up our game. The other amendment of term limits, of course, removing term limits was a big mistake that we are paying for heavily in this country. And I hope everybody has realized that we are more or less a monarchy and it's not tenable in this country. All
right, let's hear from you, Honorable Simon Mulongo, on the issue of the electoral reforms.
Yes. On the electoral reforms, first of all, I do support electoral reforms, and I'm on record for that. And I also know that we've had a lot of reforms since 1986. We started by lining up behind candidates for a number of years, or terms for elections, NRC and so on, until when we came into the CA, when we had a competitive election system, to which my good sister, Dr. Bretta, is trying to give a little more credit to us.
It's the best representation of that.
I think
he was there.
I think that
what happened?
I think that these continuous changes in the reform, in terms of electoral reforms.
That's why the man has told you he supports electoral reforms. You listen, he will give you the what happened.
No, please. There's nothing like what happened. I think to me we're continuously observing changes, and these changes will always occur. If you look at some old democracies, I was looking at some countries in Europe that got independence in 840, 900, 1000, and so on. These are like 1,200 years old independent. Not the US, which is just 248 or 50 years. But they have continuously reformed and reformed and reformed. The circumstances for reform depend on the operation environment, depends on the aspirations of the people, the generations that they come by. And I don't want us to use that to begin condemning. I've heard colleagues use some unprincipled terminologies.
Radical terminology.
Not just radical, because principled means that you're consistent. If we want democracy to play this full stretch, then let it apply.
All right.
Whether it is the Honorable Lumu's proposal or not. I think that one, the reforms I would do are to support the idea that we could reduce the number of seats of parliament, but also support the fact that it is time to begin considering the second chamber. it is not about the size of the country. It's actually about the size of issues, the population and their issues. Because we have had smaller countries by size, but they have 2 chambers. So, but what are the issues? What benefits do we derive from that? And to me, checks and balances can work better. Look at what happened in Kenya. That after the not the lower house as such, as they call
The National Assembly.
the National Assembly did pass, the subject actually...
The bigger house.
I admired the Senate. Oh my God, the quality of discussion in the Senate was so great. And I think these are the things that we can do, checks and balances. And my advocacy for the nature of emoluments in Parliament, I still insist, and I did suggest one time, we should bring down the emolument to just about 10 million. Because, you see, when you raise it to 30, 40, it becomes cutthroat competition. It's no longer about issues. It's about the quest for money. And people with the biggest slash of cash will buy their way through because they know they're investing to a heavy return that they're going to get when they go in the house. So at the end of the day, we don't have really those who have ideas. The Dr. Surukuma, who earns his 10 million, will not be able to compete.
I don't.
And so on. So I think we should be able to do such reforms in a manner that, because the reforms are necessary. For example, the issue of the Independent Electoral Commission, as you said, yeah, we're pushing for it to be as independent as necessary. The issue of returning of results, I think it should come directly from the polling station to the national reader. It should not go through those rigors of, because now at this point we have 3 tiers. We have the tallying at the polling station, then we have the tallying at the district, then we have the tallying at the national level. And in between, the chances of corrupting the results are very high. So why don't we have like other areas where the results are relayed to the National Tally Center? So to me,
electronically.
It's just electronically.
Okay.
And so I think that the reforms are necessary. We should continuously reform depending on the circumstances and needs. So we should not just abuse or block them, but as long as they're justified, we're put in place processes under the Constitution as to how such reforms can be done.
All right.
Very quickly. I keep talking about something that I think is normally taken for granted. I keep talking about a modern autocracy. And I think we take it for granted. A modern autocracy organizes elections. It has to organize elections. A modern autocracy has a parliament which operates very democratically. 100% we all agree at this table.
Not a modern
we all agree at this table that Lumu is operating very democratically. What we're discussing, we are inside the game of a modern autocrat. The modern autocrat wants us to be obsessed with the law, with procedure, with format, because the intention is already agreed. When you talk about money in parliament is part of the game. It's a democratic process where MPs have been given the powers constitutionally to discuss things, amend things, including their emoluments. You see, but that is part of the game. You have to understand that is part of the game. It's part of the circus. That instead of fighting George Musisi here, fighting Matthias Mpuga or Joel Sonyonyi, you don't fight them. You just give them money.
All right.
So we need. The point I want to understand is that we tend to downplay, because when we focus on procedure, reforms from within the same basket, when we focus on the legality of things, all these things are going to be legally packaged and democratically narrated and executed. But the end is the intention of the autocrat. I can tell you, we need a constitutional crisis to say, Museveni is out of the picture. We've hit a crisis. Let's reform every aspect. We have a molested, raped, abused, harassed constitution.
Information to him.
All right. Very quickly,
Yes,
we need to move on.
I just want to admire the professor here, that his students must be enjoying his lectures. But as George did put it, come down to the world. You see, the heaven is not there. If you define autocracy the way you do, the modern autocracy, the way the frameworks capture it, then the whole global world is captured under the modern autocracy, then how else do you want us to create changes? Give us a formula, practical, how we can achieve and get out of, be liberated out of the so-called modern autocracy.
All right, now let's move on and look at the situation of the
Question to you,
NUP. The NUP,
Yeah, but
you know,
just to add briefly that
You're
really
fair.
what useful Selma is sharing is not far-fetched. Autocracies want to be regarded as, rulers who observe the law.
Legitimate.
Rulers, yes, they seek legitimacy
the
through
Washington that,
draconian processes,
yes.
and then take you through a process that is already rigged.
Does that answer the question?
And who doesn't rig these processes? Just give me one
That's
example
what
in the
he's
world.
saying.
Yes, in the world.
So you agree with him now?
all right, let's move on and now
But
deal
the
with
way out is not
the
what
issue
I
of the
don't agree.
NUP supporters who pleaded guilty to the terrorism charges that they have been opposed to for all these years. They have been under incarceration. And on this point, I want to begin with
They rigged the process.
Counsel George Musisi, who happens to represent these people in the court martial. Musisi, this matter touches your support base as NUP, but also the party. I'm sure you guys have been beating your heads to try to come to terms with what your comrades have done.
Not really. We're not beating our heads because we've known this for a while. First of all, briefly for context, after the elections and in the course of towards the polling day, so many people were arrested, especially so many of NUP supporters were arrested and charged in the court martial. Over 500 of them were charged and released on different occasions. And in different court martials, in Baki India, in Buya, in Bombo, myself and Honorable Shamim one time had secured the release of over 200 youths on bail in Bombo alone for all sorts of frivolous cases, wearing berets, wearing red t-shirts, wearing overalls, and so on and so forth. So this group was arrested shortly after elections, and they were kept in Comunicado in safe houses for over 2 months until they were arraigned in court in 2021 June. And we've been representing them. First of all, we believe that these are politically motivated charges. Everyone knows that. Don't mind that there is. I can authoritatively say that because I've seen some of the evidence the state has presented. It's, to borrow the words of Justice Katosi in Uganda versus Kiza Besigye many years ago, it's not even sufficient to convict a chicken thief. They are in a wrong court. Civilians should not be tried in the court martial. We are only there because the Supreme Court has not ruled on that matter, where the Constitutional Court has on several occasions said that civilians, army courts, have no business trying cases involving civilians. So the only reason why they were there was because of politics. Or why they are still there, because none of them has been released yet. That is why the Minister of Youth and Children's Affairs, of course, many holders of that office think it's Youth and Childish Affairs, but the Minister of Youth and Children's Affairs.
No. Mr. Chairman, I think we talked of decorum.
Poetic license.
No, I have
poetic license enables that.
Actually, I know my limits of freedom of expression.
Can you say that again for our audience?
No.
Many holders.
No. Dr. Yusuf.
Anyway, you rightly said in the introduction that when he was swearing in, he said, "I will secure the release of NUP prisoners." The only reason why he was saying that is because then he didn't know whether they were going to plead guilty, but because he knew that they're there politically. In fact, every time we go to church and they say, "Oh, you hear those speeches, release political prisoners," those are among the people they've been talking about. They are political prisoners. They are not prisoners because they did anything to the other accused of or explosives and so on and so forth. So these overtures, you said, are we beating our heads? These overtures by the state have been on for quite a while, for almost a year now. In fact, at some point, the legal team that represents that I'm part of, we raised this issue in court. We said that, but our clients have told us that when we go and as they are waiting for their bus to Ruzira, they are taken, a group of them, a section is taken to meet army officers, and they are told to coerce. That is sometime last year. So the overtures have been on, and for me, why I'm not saying that anyone should beat their heads. First of all, what we should beat our heads over as a country, not as NUP, that you have institutions that are being used to fight political battles, that in this day and age, you have people using the law to criminalize dissent, political dissent. This is not an NUP matter. I can expand it to say that the same thing happened with the Kasese suspects, where over 100 of them, some of them even died in custody. We are lucky that these ones are still intact, but they have lost families. So it's that hopelessness that politicians are hinging on. That is why the minister was so quick to say earlier, when he was saying that, President, please, you release, but yet then they were facing trial. So, but the minister knew that they are not facing any serious charges, they are facing politics. That's why he was calling on to the president to release them even before they were convicts. So the same thing happened with the Kasese suspects, where all of them were, despite the case having the state saying we are ready to try the matter, but 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, people were in custody, no trial was taking place, some of them are dying, and they had to plead guilty out of the shortest exit. You see what happened to Mr. Kaihura. For him, he was lucky that he was out on bail, but for 5 years, his trial never kicked off.
Have you been able to come to terms with the likely implications of the decision of your people to actually plead guilty now?
Of course, the implications, first of all, there are personal implications. I know that the plan is to have them, of course, convicted. Like 3 of them have been convicted and sentenced to 4 months.
Already?
Yes. Okay. The first 3 who pleaded guilty have been convicted and sentenced to 4 months. And I know this group, when it comes, will be convicted and then may be given a presidential pardon and then taken to Chankwan's for rehabilitation. But of course, and I told them,
likely to calculate
like
4
I
months
said,
and say these people have already been in jail.
Yes, of course, it
and
takes.
They might be released.
The 4 months took into consideration the remand period, but of course, prison is entitled to remove what we call remission, so they can serve only 1 month and then. But yes, but then so there are personal implications, and I told them this about a month or 2 months ago. I told them that at the end of the day, the duty of a lawyer is to give you legal advice. There are personal implications of being convicted of an offense as serious as treachery. Treachery is akin to treason. Yes.
Treason.
Yes, and in fact, the maximum sentence is death in the UPDF Act. So there are personal implications. But the bigger issue for me, I think, it goes beyond the personal, those individuals. First of all, I understand them. I understand them because it's desperation. Just like I understood the Kasese suspects, just like I understood Kale Kaihura and all other people who had to first go to Bisam 7 to drop the charges. But the bigger issue, and for me that is where I'm beating my head over, not just these people, is that we still have a government which totally disregards the law to say that they can charge you with anything and then put the burden on you to do something in order to go out.
All right. Ambassador Mlongo, your take on this issue?
Well, unlike my colleague,
politics or matters of the law,
who thinks otherwise, the issue is purely legal because suspected crimes are said to have been committed, and they were charged in courts of law.
What crimes, rather?
And it's a whole litany of crimes which were read before these suspects, and they appeared several times. They had all the liberties to be defended by all the most brilliant legal minds in the country, including the Honorable
George Musisi.
George Musisi, who is with us here.
Can I give some information?
And unless you're saying you're not part of the brilliant legal team.
No, I'm giving information on that.
So please.
That when you are accused of a crime, the weight of the crime, it's a principle of criminal law. You should be convicted on the weight of the prosecution case, not on the weight of your defense. And I've had the
evidence provided by the prosecution.
In fact, you're even at liberty to say nothing and hold your hands like you're doing. And let the other
no, I'm not saying do nothing. I'm not saying do nothing.
I said you're at liberty to hold your hands in court.
The colleagues are just trying to aid me in my arguments, but I retain the fact that these suspects came to a time and for, I think, very good legal advice to say they should plead guilty, which they have done. And the calculation here is that they should be able to perhaps, given all the circumstances and the longevity of time on remand, they have lesser sentences.
Are you not likely to parade them before the press to start saying that
well,
it is Robert Chagulanyi and the NUP who were telling us to do this and this? Because that's what many people are pointing to.
Yeah, but I was just making my point that he said you asked the question of implications, and the argument by the legal counsel here is that there are individual implications. In other words, there's nothing about the party, when actually they've been working so hard as a party to secure their release. So I think to me it is multidimensional. It can't just be individual. But depending on what they're likely to act or say after they leave. Now the issue of whether they can be taken to Chankwanzi or they can be taken to their own
State
homes.
house for dinner.
Rehabilitation.
To me, these are liberties of individuals to make decisions about.
Okay.
Even if you take me to a place of Islamic country and I don't want to become a Muslim, I can say no. If you are taking me to Bugishu and not circumcise me and I'm just a Muganda, I would say I can say no. It's liberty. So whether they change their affiliation
But
by religion.
it's also true that your hands can be tied and your feet and you're circumcised.
I think that would be actually depriving me of my liberties, because it can even be an issue.
Isn't this what is happening even now as we speak? You know, keeping people in prison for 4 years without any meaningful trial, people would say.
To me, is we have to go by established legal regime. If we begin to be dismantling the principles and things laid out on legal frameworks, then let's come up with such changes and in the law, reforms, that can speak to what you want. But as far as I know, as a lawmaker, a constitution maker, we have the legal regimes in place. If we want to change them, then let's change them.
All right, Dr. Sarah Bilete, your reading of this situation.
Well, it's the usual methods of authoritarian leaders to use the judiciary as a tool for repression. The same messages were being sent to the likes of Nelson Mandela when they were held at Robben Island. Confess, ask for amnesty. But what made them defeat apartheid was resilience. Resilience against all odds. In Uganda, we saw the same under, PRA suspects given amnesty by then, the Amnesty Commission. I don't know whether it still exists. The so-called LRA collaborators were given amnesty certificates after the regime had tired them, exhausted their patience, and broken them down, broken their resistance to fight for their dignity. In a way, it dehumanizes people. If you allege I have committed a crime, I want to have my day in court. And you should table your evidence and defeat me. So it takes away their dignity. It's not just about personal liberties. It's about the dignity of these people. You parade them in a military court-martial, illegally and constitutionally for 4 years. You cannot adduce any single evidence. And then you're coercing them to confess that they committed crimes of terrorism, crimes of whatever. These are children that were just, whose only crime was supporting Bobi Wine. That's the only thing you can adduce if you are genuine as government. So you tire them to this extent. Some have lost their relatives, have lost their parents, children. They are tired. They are broken. So as a means, the regime can now celebrate for breaking its citizens, the back of their citizens. They are now shallow, hollow citizens, defeated by the repression. They just want to have a day or two with their relatives. And apparently most of these people died, including the brother of Kizza Besigye. So a lot of things happen to these people. So now they have given in and said, okay, let's enjoy, go out and live a normal life and maybe forget politics. Because those are some of the confessions they will make, including the Renzo Rule King recently. Only the Prime Minister survived and said, no, produce evidence. And if you have it, convict me. And have you produced? They don't have it. I mean, you bomb the kingdom and all you could recover were machetes and sticks. What evidence can you adduce?
His kingdom, by the way.
All right.
Yeah. So this is the same, rule book that you're applying to opposition and controlling dissent in this country.
It's not his kingdom. Honorable Mlongo
So
comes from
there's
the east,
nothing new.
and the other kingdom is
from-
in the Rwenzori sub-region.
We come from Inzo Yamasaba.
Omukuka.
And the other one is Omkuka, and the other one is Obusinga bwa Rwenzururu.
What crime
where
did
we
he
have
commit?
Omusinga. But let's hear your view, Dr.
But he has no kingdom. What is he going to say?
I'm a Muganda.
Oh, okay.
Ndi muzzukulu wa Lumu.
He can't even walk the Kiganda walk.
Oyaga shoti jiza mu Luganda.
Kale tamba
Kati
mu
ebiveke tajja bisobola. Anderson, I you know, when I think about being in prison as a political prisoner, I see myself too.
Pleading.
Now I see myself as a political prisoner, and I really think it's a difficult space to be in. When you live under an autocracy, every day, obanga nkoko ya mtamivu, lwokesa lwobala.
What does that mean?
Ati bitujja bitegeera. You tempted me into that direction.
But you live at the liberty
of the drunkard.
The drunkard master, not a normal
So no,
master.
actually what he's saying, you live by that day.
If you live under a drunken autocrat, obanga nkoko ya mtamivu. This is a Luganda proverb, and I'm trying to unpack it. You know, as a talking head, you know, as somebody who is in the political arena, as part of political discourse in Uganda, I have said things which I believe to be true, but which people don't want to hear. And I think every single day, ninga nkoko ya mtamivu, lwenkesa lwembala, I could be a political prisoner myself.
But you've lived decades and decades.
So you see, so it's a very difficult position to be in, and I can't imagine the pain, the trauma, the frustration, the hollowness that Sarah has described that these political prisoners have gone through, to the point that they have to say, okay,
Enough is
to salvage the little humanity left in us, let's say we are guilty. They can do whatever they want. They can either sentence us to death, it is okay, or they can release us. We are tired of being politicians. We are not ready to participate in politics anymore. That's a very difficult position, Anderson, because all of us are formed as political beings. So I can't imagine the trauma they've gone through. And as somebody who identifies as a player in the political space in Uganda, I oftentimes picture myself as a political prisoner, and I don't know who will be there to fight for me.
All right.
Okay? But that's not the point I wanted to make.
Very quickly, we need to go for a break.
I first wanted to say this at a very personal level, because I can tell you I feel it. I feel it every single day. I'm sure Sarah here feels it. I'm sure George feels it. That as a talker, somebody who refused to go into the circus at Parliament Avenue, as a talker who aspires for a radical movement outside of the autocrat's game, you feel this pain every single day. The back on track, banging the tables, you feel this every single day, that you're a candidate for jail for no reason, for clearly trumped up charges. Now, I want to flip this point a little bit to being NUP supporters, right? The label NUP supporters hovered over their heads for a very long time. And I felt, inside me, I felt NUP let them down to a degree. There are two ways, Anderson, and I want Judge to hear this really seriously. There are two ways
very quickly
political prisoners get out of prison. There are two ways. One is the government is fought and it collapses, and then they are released en masse. Those with whom they were fighting alongside fight so hard and collapse the government, and all political prisoners are released. The other way is a negotiated settlement. Political prisoners are not candidates for the law. They are candidates for political settlements. Now, I felt at that level NUP gave up on its supporters when they agreed to work with NRM, at least in Parliament. They're politically working with the system. But then being in jail was continuity of the fight.
All right.
So the fighters stayed in jail fighting, while their best agreed to enter settlement with the autocrat and work with this autocrat.
All right. Spectrum is on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break. When we return, we'll sample some of the comments that have come in, but also transition to another topic of discussion. We'll be looking at the Kenyan situation, where the Deputy President Gachagua was actually ousted yesterday through an impeachment process, and a new Deputy President was named, vetted, and approved by Parliament. Now stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra will continue after this. This is Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90, review of the major events of the week. I'm speaking to 4 panelists, including Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, Diombo Simon Mulongo, Dr. Sarah Birete, and Mr. George Musisi. Now, we need to get some feedback from the listeners, and then we will continue with this discussion. Let me see a number of comments already coming in. Kauma Digo listening in from Mitiana. Voting for Ambassador Mlongo, voting for law takes power of appointing away from the leading opposition party. It is who votes you in office that has authority over you. Article 103 to 4 of the Ugandan Constitution provides that a candidate shall not be declared as a president unless he or she obtains more than 50% of the valid votes cast. So one vote above 50% gives the presidency. Are you suggesting that under such circumstances, running of government should be shared? That's a comment there coming from Komadigo. Anthony Raisina says opposition parties should stop dreaming about winning Museveni on presidential election. We expect them to grow in maturity before thinking of leading us Ugandans. But they might not rule because, as they say, if you respect a king, kingship will reach your hands someday. Leadership is not by fighting, it's provided by God. I do believe that Uganda shall provide a perfect person to take over from where Museveni has stopped from, for the better of Ugandans. That's a comment from Anthony. Grace in Mkono, I agree with Dr. Serem Kuma, get out of parliament. MPs of the Sinn Féin party in Northern Ireland would have always refused to go to the House of Commons because they didn't believe in it. That's being principled. That's Grace in Mkono. Commander Grace writes in and says, good evening, Kenneth, and everyone in studio. For me, Honorable Lumu was forced to bring that agenda, and the aim was to fight NUP. Then we have another comment. At what stage your country rewrites its constitution? What prompts a country to rewrite a constitution? Is the problem on our constitution or its greed downgrading our constitution? We have a comment coming in from Mawa Amaza, listening in from Moyo in Western Nile. Good evening, Spectrum Extra. In Uganda, anything can happen. Maybe Honorable Lumu was being energized by someone. On the issue of NUP members, how can they accept really having explosives at the last moment? I really wonder who brought that idea to the civilians in military court and who drafted the laws they are using. Just imagine if the ICC doesn't take rebels to military court. We are not safe at all given such situations. My father was beaten by NRA soldiers in Soroti in 1987 that he was supplying medicines to the rebels, and the medicine we had in the house was amoxicillin for treating asthma only. That's Mawa Amaza, who is listening in from Moyo district. George, you had a rejoinder, and Dr. Serunkuma wanted to conclude a point very quickly.
Maybe Doctor first.
Dr.
Doctor.
Staying in jail, Olivia Uta and the others stayed in jail as continuity of the struggle. They continued their fight to remove a dictator. That was the promise NEP gave us in 2021. They were removing a dictator, and whoever ended up in jail marked the continuity of the struggle. Their resilience for 4 years not to plead guilty, for 4 years not to acquiesce to the tyranny of the Balams and all those others who are talking to them to say we are guilty so that lighter sentence could be given to them, marks a continuity of the struggle. The flip side of it is that the people that were fighting alongside them, the army that they were part of, took the struggle to a different format, entered the circus of parliament, and were overwhelmed by PACs.
Robert Chagulanyi has been on record several times reminding the people in parliament on the NUP ticket that is supposed to be a front line.
And I needed to say this, Anderson. This is the genius for me. This is the genius of Matthias Impuga over Segirinya and Sawanyana. They were both political prisoners. And Matthias Impuga, as leader of opposition, negotiated their release. I know he wouldn't admit to this because it became embarrassing to say we're removing a dictator and then you negotiated the release of political prisoners. It became embarrassing. But I think this was his genius, that he negotiated their release because he knew we as NUP agreed to enter parliament and work under the autocrat who has imprisoned some of our foot soldiers. How do we get them out of jail? Clearly, we are not ready to overthrow Yoweri Museveni. we are not motivated enough and we don't have the wherewithal to do it.
All right.
So let's negotiate with the man. And they released Sawanyana and Segirinya without pleading guilty. They got out of...
They were released on bail.
Yes.
Which is a legal process.
They didn't plead guilty. Now, the damage is that NUP failed to enter another negotiation on behalf of the 19. That they led them to the vultures from NRM itself to go and harass them into pleading guilty.
All right, let's hear from George.
Of course, I totally don't agree with what Yusuf is suggesting, and I've heard it several times from even other analysts. Two things. You wouldn't compare forming a government in opposition to a negotiation. Otherwise, you'd even blame me for going to court. That's why do you go to court when you say there's a dictator? Forming a government is a legal requirement. First of all, I always say, and NUP says, we believe in the rule of law. That's why I've even had some people say that, how comes you negotiate with police for the presidential tour? And I'll say, no, it's a legal requirement that if you're having a public management, public order, a public event, notify police. So when police ask, because we don't say that we don't recognize the police. When police says come, you come, because we are law-abiding, first and foremost. Secondly, there is even a notion, when I started, I told you that over 500 people were arrested since the elections. We are now talking about 28. Even this group of 28, when they charge it, there are 32. 4 of them are out on bail. So through those efforts of, you don't know how many people have got out from the High Court by habeas corpuses. Over 100 times we've been to the High Court for habeas corpus since they released.
In a nutshell?
So what I'm saying, even if you use the example that Yusuf has said of Segirinya and Alan, so the question would be, if they were negotiated, did it stop the political arrests? Because if you are to negotiate by piecemeal, without a structured manner, to say if they arrest Yusuf, you engage and talk. If they arrest George, you engage and talk. If the discussion is not on a structured and manner of saying that let's stop these political motivated arrests. Right. Remember when Honorable Mao was joining government, he said we need a dialogue. I don't know how far he has gone down the road.
All right.
Possibly was overwhelmed. So there's even another notion. Just give me 30 seconds to dismiss this. I've seen it on social media saying, sadly by even some otherwise serious actors, NUP negotiated for Nobiandi and Eddie Mutwe.
Actually, they actually say even the release of Bobby Wine from Gulu was negotiated.
Well, fortunately, I was...
Actually, they say Bobby Wine met President Yoweri Museveni at the 4th Division headquarters before the charges were dropped.
That is absolute rubbish. I was in Gulu that day. Nicholas Opio was in Gulu. Made that Seguna with all at the bar.
So the convoy of the president.
Well, let me talk about
where he held talks with Chagulanyi. Where he apparently held talks with Chagulanyi in the company of his wife.
That is absolute rubbish. Let me tell you. They say they negotiated for Nobianli and Eddie Mutwe. Fortunately, I also represented them from the time of arrest till we got bail in Masaka and court martial. They forget to conveniently say that actually Eddie Mutwe and Nobianli, they only talk about those names. It was even a bigger group than this one. There were 48, including Olivia Otai. Olivia was part of the 48 who were charged with Eddie Mutwe, and they were all released on bail. So people only say, they negotiated for the close bodies to make it look like there were 2 people who were arrested. There were 48.
But that's not my point. I'm not saying negotiation for a close bodies. That's not my point.
Yeah, but my point is that actually, even with the legal efforts, that's my point, over 98% of the people who are arrested have come out. That is the truth, because I know that since the elections. But then, if you are to talk, for me, I would rather not have a piecemeal discussion on piece-by-piece basis.
All right.
Because what is the purpose of talking when you say we discussed for Segirinya and was used on bail, and tomorrow they arrest 5 other people? What is the purpose of that talk?
Can I respond to that
very quickly? We are running out of time. We have another topic to tackle. Please, very quickly, in a few seconds.
I want to take this conversation to a level higher. Because you see, we now have the prisoner, the political prisoner industry and the legal team industry that we meet at that level. So NUP produces candidates for political prison. And NRM is willing to take them, and we are trapped in that loop. This is the stuff I said at the very beginning. This is the game of the autocrat. The game of the autocrat is will continuously arrest from amongst you and preoccupy you with that
And then they'll keep talking to
and
you.
then they'll give you bail, they'll give you negotiated settlements, they'll give you those things. But you need to step out of this loop where you supply the NRM with political prisoners, and the NRM preoccupies you with this lengthier process. The point I'm saying is this, that at a higher level, away from these negotiations, which I think the point I made is clear, it's negotiated or you collapse the government, at a higher level, NUP is trapped in the loop of providing political prisoners, that once these ones get out, they take others, because they know it's productive business, because the opposition of our time is interested in appearing to be fighting these causes.
No, but
one of
an NUP thing. It's been around for the last.
No, I said the opposition. I said the opposition, not the NUP. The opposition. We enjoy the game of challenging our government on human rights issues, on democratic space, so it keeps sucking in, and then we go to court. We get into these contestations, and we fail the key issues of our time.
All right.
This is a debate we can have for another day.
All right.
But I'm telling you, the supply of political prisoners is very available. After they release the 19, they will take in more, because they know.
Okay, give solutions. What would you rather do? You
step out of the game.
Yeah, you give practical solutions.
I write a column. I've spelled out the things endlessly.
All right.
Step out of the loop.
All right. Let's move on. Now, let's shift to the Kenyan situation, and I'll begin with Ambassador Simon Mlongo on this particular issue. We are looking at the Kenyan situation where the Deputy President has been removed from office, and now we have a new one, Professor Kithure Kindiki, who was nominated by President William Ruto. The fallout between William Ruto and Gachagua, did you see it coming? And what do you think would be the undercurrents in this situation?
Thank you so much. But first of all, I want to appreciate my professor's very witty and well thought out ideas. But over theorizing also has a
you got it out of my mouth. For once I agree with Simon.
It's very important to link theories
to
policy. And I just hope that he comes to grips with that. Now, back to the former Deputy President, Gachagua. If you can say GUA should read it as WA.
Gachagua.
Yes. The issue is, yes, he was, first of all, right from the time of picking a running mate, it was quite a challenge to candidate Ruto then. And one, he had to weigh the alliances of communities, because the big five in Kenya, the Kikuyus, the Luyas, the Jaluos, the Kambas, this determined a lot. And so he had to choose carefully. And I think because of the association that the family of Gachagua had been associating with the President Moi then, could have entrusted the President Ruto, Deputy President Ruto then, to perhaps select him. But also there were reservations even right from that time because of his tendencies to begin behaving more independent of the arrangements that in which he's supposed to play ball. So some people actually were prophesying problems, and unfortunately they have come to pass sooner than later. During the saga of the Gen Zs, at some stage,
Mandamano.
Yes, he was questioned. He was actually quoted to have said that he was supporting the Gen Zs to teach President Ruto a lesson because he wants to pretend to be the wise man in the room. And we're shocked about that. I mean, how could he come to say such a thing? Instead of really pulling together and seeing how they would pull through as a country.
So he deserved this.
So I think that his conduct, yes, I think his conduct violated a lot of things, including failing to move as a unity, and that can be disastrous, as you know. But I also want to correct one thing, that whereas Parliament was voting to have him approved for nomination, there was a court injunction that came in to stop the process.
For the new Deputy President?
Yes. And they would like to have the matter heard by court. And the Deputy Chief Justice was very clear, elaborate about it, that they want to hear the case first before Parliament can proceed. They're arguing that whereas the articles, I think 148, 149...
I think actually Parliament, the National Assembly had approved his name, but he can't take oath until the
Yes,
court has
yes.
determined the matter.
So there are matters to be determined. And they're arguing there are some grounds they're bringing, because I thought the Constitution is very clear who nominates, who goes to Parliament, and then how he proceeds to the next level.
And the other issue that is being raised actually in that petition is the fact that he was not heard. Gachagua was not heard in Senate on account that he was in the hospital. That's another issue that was raised.
Oh yes,
in
I
that
think
petition.
those are legalities that I think will be disposed of, and I hope they'll not hold a well-intended process to proceed.
Dr. Serunkuma, your quick thoughts on the Kenyan situation. On the mic, please.
I'm very ignorant about Kenyan politics. Not like an idiot, but I need to take in all the material. I don't think as a Ugandan analyst I've taken in enough to have an opinion. I should say that because I'm really struggling to understand the fallout. I'm struggling to understand the impeachment. So as a Ugandan analyst, I'll be slower to take a position because, as you know, in scholarship...
Do you want to yield your time?
Yeah, I'm going to give it to Sarah. As scholars, we work with concrete evidence before we come up with any theorization.
Dr. Sarah Bidet.
Second resources.
Yeah, well, the Senate approved 5 of the 11 grounds impeaching Gachagua. Even one ground would have been enough. Approving one ground would have been enough, and I know the breaking news started after approval of ground 1. So for the record, for the viewership out there, grounds 4, 5, 6, 9 were approved and voted by majority senators, whereas grounds 2, 3, 7, 8, 10, 11 were rejected by the Senate. So this means that Gachagua's defense at Senate level were able to knock out 6 grounds, more than half of the petition. They went to court before Senate in an attempt to stop the impeachment process but failed. But today they managed to stop the swearing in of the deputy president after approval of all members of the National Assembly, and it has been postponed to 24th. So these are days that the judiciary should pronounce themselves on the matter. 2 lessons for Ugandans. One is that it's very problematic to be a deputy principal at that level, at least for Kenya's history, since the days of Mzee Jaramogi or Oginga Odinga, really the vice president, now deputy president. What about the pronunciations? Really?
No, there's an earlier one.
Okay. So this position has been problematic for Kenya's history, right from independence. All vice presidents, with the exception of Moi under the last days of Kenyatta, have been problematic. Moi took a silent stance against opposition by mainly the Mount Kenya dominants then, and survived his tenure and later became the president after the death of Kenyatta. But this office is not easy. Being a deputy of a president, it means you have to be like a shadow of the president, do what they like, avoid what they don't like. We've seen some instances here in Uganda, VP Bukenya, and when people started saying the man is beginning to move as if also his hand is injured, and later what happened?
And
because
stammering.
he was, yes, because he was becoming...
And injured.
Because he had become powerful
The body posture.
We don't have a body.
through the
medical
upward,
records. Yes.
through the upward rise, he had become popular, and people had to cut his wings. So it's a very problematic office where you have to learn the body language of your boss, do the things he likes, forget yourself,
But
and
you see,
live in this shadow.
The difference between Uganda and Kenya, one would say, is that in the Kenyan process, you actually choose somebody with whom you run with, which means you agree even on the issues that you are articulating on the campaign.
I want to share an example from the global superpower, the U.S. We've seen Kamala Harris on the campaign trail, vacating some of the decisions of Biden and saying I was only a deputy who had to do what the boss wanted, not necessarily my views, because that's what that office requires. So maybe people have not learned what that job requires and what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to be your own person.
You're
You're
not
supposed to be a deputy of the main person.
You should not outshine your master.
Yes, rules of power. So people need to learn. So you can look at now the shadow vice presidents we have in this country. Honorable Jessica Rupo is more or less non-existent.
She's not a shadow.
That's my opinion. It's my
Her
opinion.
Excellency is not a shadow.
It is my opinion that since the fallout with the VP Bukenya, the vice president we've had have taken more or less a shadow stance. They are like they don't exist until the boss calls upon them. You can look at the brilliant former VP Sekandi and how he became a shadow from parliament to vice president's office to survive the challenges of that office.
Dr. Sarah, it's not survival. They are simply doing what the law says. They are not presidents unless they are delegated to do so, to be so.
Look at the transition of the Right Honorable Vice President Sekandi, who became a forgotten figure, from a brilliant Speaker of Parliament to a forgotten public figure as a VP for 10 years. He's even more forgotten now in retirement. We can't even remember his legacy. That's how bad that office is.
Judge Musisi,
your
take on the Kenyan situation.
Yes, I would like to take it up right there where Sarah stopped it. That and make no mistake, I make jokes with Yusuf about political theorizing. I know that every practical begins with theory, but sometimes when we are making...
it's the other way around. Get this theory arises out of practice.
All right.
Not in all circumstances.
Of course, they are theorists.
It's not a chicken and egg thing.
When Kenya was making the constitution, they tried to do a shadow of the US, where a presidential candidate nominates. That's one thing they forget. It's the candidate who nominates, and then you elect it together. And what Mr. Mpuga is also trying to bring in our reform. However, that I think presupposes other stronger systems, working systems. Because one, post 2010 constitution of Kenya, we've had the president falling out with his deputy. Uhuru fell out with Ruto. This one has fallen out even in the first term. Leave alone all the things they're accusing Gachagua of, the corruption and so on and so forth, whether there is truth or not. I know he's going to be charged, I think. But look at the charge of insubordination, where the president addressed the country after the riots, and then the vice deputy president went and addressed the country as well.
From Mombasa.
Just imagine if it was here.
I saw the situation and I was
in the case
surprised.
of the court, that is...
What do you mean by here? What does it mean?
I'm saying, just imagine if
that situation was
here. So what I'm saying is, the deputy president, if you're talking about insubordination and all that, that can, on that case alone, that can be subordination. And Gachagua has been saying that I was elected by 7 million people. He has been saying that. But before you're elected by 7 million, you are nominated by the candidate, by someone.
You're serving at the pleasure of somebody.
So the question, and why I entirely agree with Sarah, that Kenya maybe needs to interrogate, are the institutions strong enough to accommodate this very strong
hybrid
office
situation
of the deputy president? Maybe because it has fallen on two things now, and it may be self-reflect. There's no guarantee that Ruto will go through with Mr. Professor, and even on the Senate without falling out, because it creates a person in his own right. The deputy president, you cannot sack me.
You need to be a shadow.
And the ramifications are great. Like, for instance, for Gachagua, that you can't even hold any other office. Now you've been impeached.
For 10 years.
It ends your career, almost.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think that it's something that they may need to re-examine.
All right, very quickly, some comments coming in. No prisoner succumbing to the guilt plea is no different to a young girl giving into the brutality of a defiler. It's the chest thumping of the defiler that must be very disturbing. Somebody writing and says, Honorable Lumu is a Muganda to fight a Muganda. That's where they are experts. That's a comment from Mariko. Then somebody writes and says, it's crazy how Trump and Gachagua are more or less similar. Radical, but in a way, Trump has been impeached twice, but he's still in the political space, yet Gachagua's political life is now dead and buried. Is it dead and buried?
No.
All right, we have a comment. That's a comment from Alan. He also says, why is the Uganda Law Society so quiet in Uganda on issues of NUP supporters, yet in Kenya the Law Society is so active? Another comment from
newly
Aroma.
elected.
Comment coming in from Aroma Patrick, listening in from Lira. No prisoners committed legal political suicide by confessing to the crimes they never committed. They are going to remain the state prisoners as long as NRM still rules Uganda. They have forfeited their freedoms and human rights of association, freedom of speech and expression. They will never participate in noob politics again. Well,
I understand.
those are some of the comments that are coming in very quickly in a few seconds.
Comment. You know why I said I wasn't sure about to comment on Kenya? Because there's more than what meets the eye.
All right.
You see, in the same moment, the Gen Z process was ongoing, and then they quickly died down, and we had the impeachment movement.